Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're digging into some sources you sent over, all focusing on one particular ship.
That's right. The Everconsist.
Yeah, the Everconsist. And our plan is basically to unpack the details from these sources, just about this one ship, and see what kind of picture it paints.
It's often surprising how looking closely at one specific thing, like a single vessel, can tell you so much about the bigger, global system.
Absolutely. It really can illuminate the connections. So let's dive right in. Your sources, first off, they confirm what type of ship it is.
Yep. A container ship.
Right, a container ship. Not exactly a shocker for a ship named Everconsist, but good to confirm.
Exactly. That tells us its main job, standardized boxes, fitting into that whole global container flow.
And the flag. The sources mention it sails under the flag of Panama.
Panama. Yeah, that's one of the biggest ones, flag-wise, especially for big commercial ships like this.
Okay, so flying a Panamanian flag, that means something specific, right?
It does. It involves certain registration steps, regulations they have to follow, international rules. For a lot of owners, it's just practical. It helps with the admin, compliance, navigating the maritime legal stuff globally.
Gotcha. Practical advantages. Okay, makes sense. Now, dimensions. Your sources get really specific here.
You do.
Length overall.
Yeah.
171.98 meters, and the width, 28.46 meters.
Right. And those numbers, they immediately give you a sense of its capabilities, the routes it's probably built for.
So 171.98 long, 28.46 wide. What does that translate to in, ship categories?
Well, by today's standards, that puts it kind of in the mid-size range for container ships. I mean, it's still a big ship, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But these dimensions, they really dictate which ports it can get into, the canals or straits it can pass through.
Yeah.
Basically, how much stuff it can carry. It's kind of designed to be a workhorse on specific routes.
Okay, a workhorse. And it's a new workhorse, relatively speaking. Sources say built in 2022.
Yeah.
So that makes it, 3 years old now?
Just 3 years old. And that's really key.
Why is that so significant?
Well, in the life of a big cargo ship, 3 years is basically brand new, just off the lot almost.
Huh, yeah.
A ship built in 2022, it's going to have modern design features, probably built with fuel efficiency in mind. Think about environmental rules,
right.
The newer regulations.
Exactly, and likely more advanced tech for navigation, operations, compared to older ships anyway. It's a recent investment in the whole supply chain system, built to last for many, many years.
So let's pull those threads together then. We've got a 3-year-old ship, Panamanian flag.
Common, practical.
And these specific dimensions, 171.98 by 28.46 meters. Kind of mid-sized, but flexible.
Right.
What does that whole profile suggest about this ship, the Everconsist, and its job in the grand scheme of things? Based on these sources?
Well, it points towards a modern, probably quite efficient ship, likely working on established trade routes, maybe not the absolute biggest main lines, or perhaps acting as a feeder ship, connecting smaller ports to bigger hubs.
Exactly, connecting to the larger hubs. Its size, while not megamax huge, is big enough to carry a lot of containers, but it keeps the flexibility to get into more ports than those ultra-large ships can. And being just 3 years old, that means it's likely very competitive on running costs, especially fuel burn. That's huge for profitability.
Right, fuel's a massive cost.
A massive cost. So you've got a young, kind of agile player in a really competitive market. It benefits from that widely accepted Panamanian flag framework, and it's designed for how trade actually works today. It's that specific mix age, size, flag that really defines its usefulness economically and logistically right now.
Wow. It really is fascinating how just those few specific details from the sources can sketch out such a clear role.
It really does. Every detail isn't just, a number, it's a clue to how it works, its economic purpose.
So, thinking about this ship, the Everconsist, with this specific profile, this young Panamanian, significantly sized but not giant ship, how should you, our listener, think about a vessel like this? How does a ship with these exact details connect to, the stuff that flows around the world and ends up in your life every day?
Yeah, that's the interesting part.
What does a ship like this tell us about the sheer scale and the efficiency needed to move everything from, your phone to your sofa across the oceans?
It really brings it down to earth, doesn't it? It highlights this sort of the physical reality behind that smooth movement of goods we usually just take for granted. This ship with these specs, it's a real tangible piece of that huge, very complex puzzle.
Absolutely, a vital piece. Well, thank you for providing these sources for our deep dive today.
My pleasure.
It's always good to get down to the specifics and appreciate the just incredible machinery and coordination that keeps everything moving.
Okay, welcome back everyone to The Dive. Usually, we tackle these really broad topics, pulling from all sorts of research. But today, it's different, more focused. We're using the source material you provided about just one ship, the Crystal Wave. And our mission really is just to quickly unpack the essentials from that info, see what it tells us. I'm actually quite interested to see what kind of profile emerges from, well, just these specific details.
Yeah, it's interesting because even just a few key data points, they can really give you a sense of a ship's purpose, its place in the world. These aren't just abstract numbers, they're fundamental. They tell a story.
Absolutely. So let's start building that story then, piece by piece, and strictly from the information you sent us. First thing, the most basic question, I guess. What kind of ship is the Crystal Wave?
Okay, well, the sources you gave us are clear on that. She is a bulk carrier.
A bulk carrier, right? Okay, for anyone listening who maybe isn't totally familiar, what does that actually mean, being a bulk carrier?
It means she's specifically designed for unpackaged dry cargo in bulk. So think things like grains, wheat, corn maybe, or minerals, iron ore, coal, even cement. These ships are basically the workhorses for global commodities. Huge quantities of raw materials, stuff that fuels industry, feeds people.
Got it. Okay, so right off the bat, we know her main job, moving massive amounts of loose, dry stuff. What about where she's registered her flag state? The sources mentioned that too, didn't they?
Yes, they did. She sails under the flag of Panama.
Panama, okay. That's a flag you hear about quite often at sea. What's the significance there generally?
Well, Panama runs one of the largest ship registries in the world, a massive one. See, ships are flagged in a country, and that country governs the rules, safety standards, even legal stuff. And registering somewhere like Panama, it's a very common choice for ship owners globally, often down to things like registration convenience maybe, or flexibility perhaps.
Interesting. Okay, so her type tells us her function, her flag gives us her sort of administrative home. What about her age? I think the sources gave a build year?
Yeah, that's right. The Crystal Wave was built in 2021.
2021, wow. So that makes her just, 4 years old right now? What does that imply, being a relatively new ship?
Well, 2021 is considered pretty young, yeah, in maritime terms, very young. It typically means she's likely got more modern technology on board, probably more fuel efficient than, older vessels. And you'd expect less immediate maintenance compared to a ship that's maybe decades old. She's really just starting her working life.
Practically brand new then. Okay, and finally, let's talk scale, size. The sources give us her dimensions.
They do, yes. Her length overall, the LOA, is 139.99 meters, and her width or beam is 23.04 meters.
Okay, 139.99 meters long, call it 140 meters, and just over 23 meters wide. Those numbers, they really give you a tangible sense of her size, don't they? I mean, she's not one of the absolute giants, the ones over 300 meters, but nearly 140 meters is still pretty substantial. What does that size suggest to you?
That kind of size profile, yeah, around 140 meters. It likely puts her in the handy-max or maybe handy-sized bulk carrier categories. And ships of this size, they're incredibly versatile. They can get into a much wider range of ports around the world compared to the really huge Cape-sized carriers. Ports with, say, shallower water or smaller docks. So that flexibility means she can serve lots of different routes, specific customer needs.
Ah, okay. So her dimensions aren't just numbers on a page. They tell us something about where she can operate, what kind of trade she's suited for. Built for versatility, port access.
Precisely, yeah. Type, flag, age, and size, those core details, pulled straight from the sources you shared. They immediately start to define her operational identity, her potential.
Okay, so let's wrap this specific deep dive up then. Based only on the source material you provided us, we've established the Crystal Wave is a young, versatile bulk carrier built just back in 2021, flying the very common flag of Panama. And with dimensions around 140 meters long and 23 meters wide, which suggests she's likely operating on routes that need that flexibility to access a variety of ports, this dive really just pulled those key facts and what they immediately imply straight from your material.
It really makes you appreciate how much insight you can actually get from just these, fundamental details, doesn't it?
It really does. And maybe that raises an interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. Based on this foundation we've just sketched out, what other fascinating things might there be to uncover about the life and the journeys of a ship like the Crystal Wave? Things may be hidden in other sources beyond these basic facts.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today, and our source material is really focused, just laser focused on one thing, the details about a single vessel.
That's right. Yeah, instead of looking at, the whole enormous picture of global shipping, we're zooming right in, looking at the characteristics of one particular ship based on the data you've got there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way, I think, to make that huge system feel a bit more, tangible.
Absolutely. And this specific ship we're zeroing in on today, according to this information, it's called the Indo Euro.
Indo Euro.
Got it.
Yeah, Indo Euro. So, our mission is pretty clear. Let's quickly pull out the key details and figure out what they tell us about this vessel.
Okay, so looking at the source,
Yeah.
What's the basic idea? What kind of ship are we actually talking about here?
Well, the source identifies the Indo Euro as a container ship. Seems straightforward enough.
Right, a container ship.
Yeah.
Built to carry those standard boxes we see everywhere. Okay.
Exactly. And where does this specific one call home, officially speaking? What flag is she flying? The data says the Indo Euro sails under the flag of the Marshall Islands.
Ah, the Marshall Islands. Now, for anyone listening who might be less familiar with shipping,
Yeah.
why is that flag state detail so important? It's more than just decoration, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The flag state, well, sometimes it's called the flag of convenience, like often in cases like this one.
Mm-hmm.
It basically dictates the rules the ship has to follow.
Rules like?
Everything. Safety standards, environmental regulations, even down to labor rules for the crew. And it's also where the ship is registered, which impacts things like taxes, legal jurisdiction. The Marshall Islands are actually a very popular flag state for big international ships.
Fascinating. Just that one detail unlocks so much about its operation. Okay, let's get physical. What about the Indo Euro's size? Dimensions are pretty fundamental.
They really are. So the source gives her length overall, or LOA, as 172 meters.
172 meters. Wow, that's a pretty substantial size. Longer than a U.S. football field, end zones included, just to give you a sense of scale.
Yeah, it's decent.
And her width. What's the beam?
Her breadth is listed as 28.45 meters.
Okay, so 172 meters long, just over 28 meters wide. That kind of puts her, in the mid-size category for container ship?
Exactly. She's not one of those massive, ultra-large container vessels, the ULCVs that carry 20,000 containers more.
Yeah.
But a ship this size, sometimes called a feeder or maybe just medium, it's incredibly versatile.
Versatile how?
Well, they can get into a much wider range of ports around the world compared to the real giants. They're crucial for connecting the big hub ports to smaller regional ones.
Ah, that makes sense. That versatility is really key for logistics. Means the Indo Euro isn't just stuck serving the megaterminals.
Exactly.
Okay, what else does the data tell us about her history?
Yes, the source gives her build year, 2020.
2020. Okay, quick math. That makes her about, 5 years old right now?
Correct, 5 years old. And in the life of a commercial ship, 5 years is, it's quite young.
Pretty new, yeah. What does that suggest?
It suggests she likely has relatively modern maritime technology on board. Things like possibly more fuel-efficient engines, up-to-date navigation systems.
And it probably meets newer environmental rules, too.
Very likely, yes. Compliance with more recent regulations. And, a younger ship generally means fewer immediate worries about big structural repairs or the kind of maintenance costs that come with older steel.
Right. So let's put these pieces together for the Indo Euro. We've got a 5-year-old mid-sized container ship, 172 meters long by about 28 and a half wide, flying the Marshall Islands flag.
That's the picture the data paints.
It's easy just to list those facts, but when you think about these specific details, this is just one single ship out of, tens of thousands? Each with its own data fingerprint like this.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I think, is to pause and consider these exact details about this one ship, the Indo Euro, 5 years old, her specific size, with particular flag. What does knowing this level of detail about just one vessel make you think about the incredible scale? The intricate logistics, the constant tracking, the massive global network needed, not just for the whole fleet, but just to keep this one ship operating safely and efficiently day after day.
It really does put the complexity of the whole system into perspective, doesn't it? Just from looking at one piece.
All right, let's dive right in today.
Okay.
We're zooming in, really focusing our attention on just one specific vessel, the Wan Hai 292. So forget the big picture for a second. We're going microscopic here.
Right. And our source material for this deep dive, it's pretty much just the raw specs, the technical detail.
Exactly, just the numbers and labels. And the mission really is to see what interesting nuggets we can pull out quickly.
Yeah.
What can you actually learn about a ship just from, well, its specifications? I'm curious.
Well, it's often quite revealing, even a few specific data points can give you a surprisingly clear idea.
Okay, let's unpack the Wan Hai 292 then. Looking at these specs, first things first, what type of ship are we talking about?
It's clearly identified as a container ship.
Right.
So its entire purpose is moving those standard metal boxes, the ones that drive global trade. It's built for that and nothing else.
Specialized. Got it. And where is it registered? What flag does it fly?
It sails under the flag of Singapore.
Okay, Singapore. And that's significant because...
Well, the flag state dictates the rules, the safety standards, the legal stuff. Singapore is a huge maritime center. Very well respected, generally known for being efficient and adhering to international regulations. So a modern ship flagged there, that says something.
Right, it suggests a certain standard of operation. Okay, what about its age? How long has it been around?
The build year listed is 2022.
2022, wow.
Yeah, so as of today, that makes the Wan Hai 292 only about, 3 years old?
Just 3 years. In ship terms, that's basically brand new, isn't it?
Practically, yeah. For a big commercial vessel, that's really young.
And what does that youth imply? What are the benefits?
Well, a 3-year-old ship almost certainly has the latest tech, especially, things like fuel efficiency, environmental systems.
Meeting the newer regulations.
Exactly. Things that have come into force recently. It likely means lower running costs, better reliability compared to, say, a 15 or 20-year-old ship. It's a modern asset.
Okay, so we have a young, modern container ship flagged in Singapore. What about its actual size, the physical dimensions?
The specs give us a length overall of 175 meters.
175 meters.
Okay. And a width or beam of 29 meters.
175 by 29. Those aren't just numbers, they define as physical limits where it can go.
Precisely. 175 meters. What's that, almost 2 football fields long?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So how do those specific dimensions, 175 by 29, connect back to its job as a container ship?
That kind of size profile, sort of mid-range length with that beam, often points towards ships designed for particular trade lanes.
Okay.
It might be what they call a feeder vessel.
A feeder, meaning?
Meaning it might collect containers from smaller ports and feed them into the larger hub ports where the giant transoceanic ships dock.
Okay.
Especially common in places like Asia, which is, Wan Hai Line's main operating area. It's big enough to be efficient, but maybe not so huge. It's limited to only the world's megaports.
That really starts to connect the dots. A young, efficient ship, Singapore flag, dimensions suggesting maybe a regional or feeder role.
Exactly. See, each simple bit of data starts to build on the others. You get this picture of a modern, purpose-built vessel, probably playing a key role in a busy part of the supply chain.
So wrapping this up then, just from these few specs, container ship, Singapore flag, built 2022, 175 meters by 29 meters, we get a pretty solid first impression of the Wan Hai 292. It's a very contemporary vessel, optimized for containers, operating under a strong regulatory framework, and likely designed for specific, maybe regional trade routes.
It really shows how much you can infer just from that core technical data, the design choices, the likely operational life. It's all hinted at.
Absolutely. And it makes you think. When you consider those exact dimensions, 175 meters long, 29 meters wide, what questions does that raise for you listening right now?
Yeah.
Questions about the incredible scale of planning, the engineering, the sheer coordination needed just to design, build, and operate one vessel of that specific size within the whole global system. Something to chew on.
Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're zeroing in on just one specific piece of the massive global trade puzzle. It's a container ship, the Arica Bridge. You've got some source material for us all about this one vessel. And our mission really is just to dive into that profile you provided and pull out the key details, the specs.
Yeah, and focusing on just one ship like this, I think it really helps. It grounds the whole idea of global shipping. You see the scale, the specifics, it's looking closely at one single component to understand the whole machine.
Exactly. Not just a list of facts, but trying to get a feel for this one particular vessel from the info you shared. So, all right, let's get into it. What does the source material actually say the Arica Bridge is? What type of ship?
Okay, so the profile lists it specifically as a container ship.
A container ship.
Purpose-built, for carrying those standard shipping containers we see everywhere.
So workhorses of logistics, really.
Okay.
And looking at the documents, Where is she registered? What flag is she flying?
The material indicates her flag state is Panama.
Panama. Okay, that's always a key piece of info. The flag state governs quite a bit.
Regulations, jurisdiction, all that.
So, a container ship, Panama flag. Now, size. These things are always enormous. What are the dimensions in your source?
Right, so the profile gives us the main numbers. Length overall, 199.93 meters.
Wow, okay, just under 200 meters.
Yeah, and her width, the beam, that's listed as 32.2 meters.
Almost 200 meters long? That's pretty substantial. Gives you a sense of scale, doesn't it? Like maybe 2 football fields end to end, roughly?
Something like that, yeah. A big vessel. And over 32 meters wide.
Those dimensions definitely define her capabilities, where she can dock, the routes she takes, I imagine.
Absolutely.
What else did the source mention? Anything about her history, like when she was built?
Yes. Gives the build year. The Arica Bridge was built in 2010.
2010, okay. So doing the math, that makes her about 14 years old now.
Correct.
So not exactly brand new off the slipway, but certainly well within her operational lifespan for a large commercial ship.
Definitely. Ships like this often operate for 25, 30 years, sometimes more.
Right. So let's just recap the key identifiers we pulled purely from the data you provided. We've got type, container ship, flag, Panama, dimensions, roughly 200 meters long by 32 meters wide.
199.93 by 32.2, yep.
And built 2010.
That's the core profile based on this source.
And these details, even though they seem pretty straightforward, they really form the identity card for this vessel in the huge global fleet.
Exactly. Each point tells you something about her potential role, her context.
It's true. Looking at the profile for just one ship, like the Arica Bridge here, it does give you a more tangible connection to that whole vast world of international shipping.
Yeah, it makes it a bit more real than just talking about abstract trade flows.
You see the numbers, the flag, the age, and you can almost picture this specific ship out there on the water.
And, just sticking to the details we extracted from the source material, it does kind of spark a thought, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, you see, she was built in 2010, so relatively modern in ship terms.
Right.
And she sails under the Panama flag. So you might ask yourself, just based on those facts, what does that combination suggest? A 14-year-old ship flying the flag of Panama. What might be the implications, if any, of that specific pairing, the vessel's age and its flag state? Particularly when you think about things like regulations or maybe operational choices within international trade.
That's an interesting angle. What the flag choice for a relatively modern ship might signify.
Yeah, just something to mull over, thinking about these massive ships moving goods across the globe. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today, we're doing something a bit different.
Yeah.
You, the listener, gave us just one source this time. It's a profile, like a spec sheet, for one specific container ship.
Okay, interesting. A single data point.
Exactly. And our mission really is just to unpack this document, see what we can learn by focusing only on the details provided about this one ship.
It's definitely a focused approach. Usually we're comparing sources, looking for patterns across different reports.
Right. It feels almost microscopic, just one ship profile. What can we really pull from such a narrow view?
Well, I think what's compelling is seeing how much those sort of fundamental details can actually tell us, especially in a system that relies so much on specifics.
Okay.
So the profile gives us the ship's name, right? It's called the ZHONGUNAAI.
ZHONGU Nan Hai.
Got it. And straight away it tells us the type, container ship.
Okay, container ship. So built for boxes.
Exactly. Its whole reason for being is stacking and moving those standard containers. The ones carrying everything imaginable. And it also says it sails under the flag of China.
Right, the flag, which usually points to registration, the laws it follows.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Precisely. That tells you its regulatory home, essentially. But then you get these numbers that seem, well, almost weirdly exact.
Yeah, I saw that. Length overall, 171.95 meters. Width, 27.54 meters, like down to the centimeter.
Why 0.95? Why 0.54?
Does it really matter if it's 172 meters versus 171.95 for something that huge?
Oh, absolutely. In shipping, in logistics, those fractions of a meter, they count.
Really? How?
Well, think about ports. Berths have specific lengths. Canals, like Panama, have very strict width limits. Even just calculating how much cargo it can carry safely, stability, it all needs exact dimensions.
Oh, okay.
So these numbers, 171.95 by 27.54, they define exactly where the ship, the ZHONGUNAAI, can operate and what routes it's using. And the profile adds another piece built in 2019.
2019. So that makes it, what, 6 years old now? Still pretty new for a big ship like this.
Correct. It's a modern vessel, built with current tech, designed for the trade routes that exist today, routes that can handle its specific size.
Okay, so let's step back a second. We got the name, the type container ship, the flag China, its age 6 years, and these super precise dimensions. What's the bigger picture here? Why focus on these details for just this one ship from this one source?
Well, I think it's about seeing how these maybe seemingly dry facts are actually the real concrete building blocks of global trade. This ship, the Zhong Gu Nan Hai, with its exact 171.95 meter length, its specific beam, its identity under the Chinese flag, it's modern age. It's not just data on a page, it's a real thing, a physical asset out there working. Each fact from this profile describes a tangible part of the massive, complex machine that moves goods around the planet. This one profile kind of gives you the DNA of one specific workhorse in that global system.
So even from just these basics, these specific facts about one vessel, we get a sense of the sheer detail and precision needed for global trade to even happen.
That's exactly it. That's the takeaway, I think. This deep dive into just the Zhong Gu Nan Hai profile, container ship, China flag, built 2019, 171.95 meters long, 27.54 meters wide. It makes the whole abstract idea of a global logistics field very concrete, very specific.
Yeah, it really does. Which leads to a final thought, maybe, just based on what this source told us. Imagine the scale of the world's economy that's represented by just this one ship, the Zhong Gu Nan Hai, defined by these exact numbers we found in the profile. And then think about how many more ships like it, maybe hundreds, thousands, each with their own specific profile, are out there right now doing the same thing.